Echoes of West Point, A Soldier's Journey, by Jonathan A. Stratton. In the heart of the Hudson Valley, where the river flows with a quiet authority and the mountains cradle the earth's secrets, I found myself at the precipice of my dreams and my future. It was the summer of 1933 when I, a young lad barely of 20 summers, set foot in the United States Military Academy, better known as West Point. The solemn granite buildings stood as stalwart guardians of American heritage, a testament to the unyielding spirit of the nation we pledged to serve. My heart throbbed with a strange cocktail of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and a deep-set pride that seemed to echo the very history of this venerated institution. Even then, beneath the burden of heavy suitcases and a heavier resolve, I felt an inexplicable connection to the previous generations of cadets who had embarked on the same path, a shared destiny woven into the very fabric of my uniform. On that day, my mother, a gentle soul with a steely backbone, pressed a kiss to my forehead, her eyes glistening with proud tears. "Our boy is a man," she whispered to my father, her hand trembling in his. In their faces, I saw mirrored reflections of my own dreams and aspirations. With their blessings warm on my skin and their faith burning bright in my heart, I entered the gray fortress that was to be my home for the next 4 years. From the beginning, West Point was a crucible fashioning raw boys into men of steel. The grueling regimen, the unyielding discipline, the constant pressure to be a beacon of strength and integrity were all relentless teachers. Every day was a test, each moment a lesson, and every night a chance to reflect on our journey. From the crack of dawn to the fall of darkness, West Point demanded everything of us, and we gave willingly, knowing the rewards would be well worth the toil and sweat. And so my journey began. Among the throng of fresh faces, I forged bonds of camaraderie. Amidst the relentless drilling and relentless scrutiny, friendships were born. Through shared hardships, through laughter and tears, we became more than just fellow cadets. We became brothers. Most memorable among them was James, a boy from the Dust Bowl plains of Oklahoma. He had a farm-tanned face, a heart as vast as his home state, and a contagious laughter that seemed to carry the echoes of the heartland. James was the spirit of West Point, a living embodiment of its time, honored values, duty, honor, country. Our friendship, born in the crucible of West Point, was more profound than any kinship I'd known. On days when the weight of discipline bore down on us, when the mountains seemed too high to climb, James was there. His laughter lit the way through the darkest times. His shoulder was always there to lean on, and his unyielding faith in our shared destiny never wavered. The rigors of academic study matched the physical demands. From strategy to mathematics, from history to the sciences, West Point was committed to producing not only soldiers, but leaders, thinkers, men of discerning minds. I remember the long nights under the dormitory lights, with textbooks sprawling like a miniature battlefield, equations and theorems waging war on our weary minds. But the pursuit of knowledge became as vital to us as the air we breathed. And yet, within the rigid walls of West Point, there was also beauty. The ethereal fog that draped itself over the Hudson River during dawn, the crimson hue of autumn leaves, the silent serenity of the chapel, they lent a poignant charm to our stern surroundings. As time passed, West Point ceased to be an institution and became a part of us. It had seeped into our veins, shaping us, molding us. We were no longer boys from different corners of the nation. We were cadets of West Point, bound by a shared purpose, a common spirit. As the years passed, the world outside our hallowed academy was changing. From afar, we could hear the growing rumble of a world in turmoil, the distant drumming of a storm approaching. The 1930s were not a peaceful time. Unemployment was rife. Bread lines lengthened and families fell into despair as the Great Depression tightened its grip on the nation. Farther away, across the Atlantic, another menace was looming, a threat that whispered tales of war and devastation. Within our classrooms, conversations echoed the grim prospects of the world outside. Professors spoke of strategy and tactics, the art of diplomacy, and the dreadful costs of conflict. The somber reality of what lay ahead for us started to seep into the crevices of our daily existence. Meanwhile, West Point continued to instill in us the qualities that would guide us through the challenges to come. I recall the day when the Commandant of the Corps addressed us, his gaze sweeping across the sea of cadets. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing the weight of his words. "In times of peace, we prepare for war. In times of war, we strive for peace. The nation will look to you, the leaders of tomorrow, to guide them through the storm. Always remember, the true mark of a leader is not how they wield their power, but how they serve their people." In those grim days, as the world teetered on the brink, West Point was an anchor. It provided us a sense of order amidst the chaos, a beacon of light in an increasingly dark world. And it was within these granite walls that I found my calling, not just as a soldier, but as a leader, a servant of the people, a defender of our cherished freedoms. But life was not all somber reflections and grueling training at West Point. There were moments of lightness, too, moments that I hold dear even as I cast my mind back over the chasm of years. On certain evenings, the parade grounds would transform into a stage, a setting for the delightful performances by the Cadet Glee Club. Their songs, echoing off the stone edifices, were a balm to our weary souls, reminding us that there was still beauty to be found even in the duress of times. Then there were the football games, where we traded our parade drills for cheering and camaraderie, our disciplined ranks for the unbridled joy of sport. The Army-Navy game was always a highlight, a fierce yet friendly competition that underscored our shared commitment to service. I remember the exhilarating thrill as we watched our team clash against the midshipmen, our cheers echoing amidst the crisp winter air, our collective spirits undeterred by the biting cold. However, it wasn't just the high spirits that I remember. It was the unity. When we cheered for our team, it was as if our individual voices merged into a single resonant note, reverberating through the stadium. In those moments, we were not just cadets. We were a family bound by shared pride, shared dreams, and a shared love for our alma mater. And amidst all the demands of West Point, there was also love. She was the daughter of a visiting professor, a vision of elegance and grace that seemed almost out of place in our stern environment. Her name was Eleanor, and she brought with her a kind of gentleness that softened the edges of our harsh world. Eleanor, with her laughter like a spring breeze and eyes reflecting the warmth of a summer afternoon, was my solace, my quiet harbor in the tempestuous sea of cadet life. West Point, in its wisdom, gave us not just the tools to be soldiers, but also the moments to be young men. It reminded us that even amidst discipline and duty, there was room for joy, for song, for love. And these experiences, these memories, were as integral to my time at West Point as the lessons in leadership and service. The summer of 1937 marked a significant turning point in my West Point journey. It was a year of last things and also of firsts. The last time I would walk the campus as a cadet, the first time I would don my officer's uniform, the last time I would sit in a classroom, the first time I would impart my knowledge to younger cadets, the last time I would stand in line with my fellow cadets, and the first time I would lead them. I remember standing before the mirror, adjusting the collar of my officer's uniform, looking into the eyes of the man I'd become. The boy who had first entered the granite walls of West Point 4 years ago was long gone. In his place stood an officer, a leader, a defender of the nation. Graduation was a day of mixed emotions. The joy of accomplishment was tinged with the bittersweetness of goodbye. James, my companion through the journey, stood by my side, his eyes gleaming with unshed tears. Our friendship, tempered by the trials of West Point, was not ending but entering a new phase. We were no longer fellow cadets. We were fellow officers. The moment that etched itself deeply into my heart was when I received my commission, my appointment as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. As the superintendent handed me the document, his gaze steady, his words filled with pride, I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. The dreams of the boy from years ago had become a reality. I was a West Point graduate, ready to serve my country. The ceremony ended under the warm glow of a summer evening, the setting sun casting long shadows across the parade ground. As I turned to leave, I looked back at the granite edifice that had been my home for the past 4 years. West Point had given me more than an education. It had given me a purpose, a sense of duty, and a brotherhood that I would carry with me through the trials to come. Life beyond the confines of West Point was a stark contrast to the regimented existence we had known. The country was caught in the throes of change. The Great Depression's bitter sting still echoed, but there were signs of recovery. New Deal programs were breathing life back into the economy, building bridges and dams and filling people with hope. Despite the challenges, the discipline and fortitude instilled in me at West Point held me in good stead. I was posted to Fort Benning in Georgia, where the balmy southern air was a far cry from the brisk breezes of the Hudson Valley. Amidst these new surroundings, I found familiar ground in the duties of an officer. The routine of drills, the strategy sessions, the responsibility of leading men were all remnants of my time at the academy. Yet they bore a different weight now, a sobering reminder that the stakes were real and high. James was posted in the Philippines, a world away from my own. But the miles did nothing to diminish our bond. His letters, filled with tales of tropical weather and vibrant local culture, were a welcome respite in my disciplined life. In return, I wrote to him about my experiences, about the men under my command, and about the challenges and triumphs of leading in the real world. Our shared history at West Point remained a firm anchor in the swirling currents of our new lives. Eleanor and I continued our relationship, navigating the challenges of distance and military life. Her letters, scented with her favorite lavender perfume, were filled with words of encouragement, anecdotes from her day, and sketches of scenes from her life. They were fragments of normalcy in my otherwise military existence. As time passed, our bond deepened, nurtured by our shared dreams and the promise of a shared future. The world continued its march towards uncertainty, its undercurrents rippling through our lives. Despite this, we, the sons of West Point, held firm, drawing upon the lessons we had learned and the bonds we had formed. We were officers now, carrying not just our own dreams, but the hopes of our nation. As the calendar pages flipped towards the 1940s, the world began to burn. Europe, once a continent of culture and history, was now a battleground. A war, unlike any we'd seen before, was looming, a dark cloud spreading its chilling shadow across nations. The United States, while not yet directly involved, was feeling the ripples of the storm. At Fort Benning, our training became more focused, the specter of war casting a long shadow over our drills. Each strategy session carried a heavier weight. Each training exercise bore the signature of the turmoil across the Atlantic. It was clear that we were preparing for the inevitable. I remember one particular evening when a telegram arrived. The news it bore was a chilling echo of our worst fears. It read, "James, missing, Philippines." My heart sank, and a cold dread washed over me. My friend, my brother in arms, was lost in the face of the brewing storm. It felt as if the ground beneath me had shifted and the world had tilted on its axis. I clutched the telegram, my knuckles white, and the world blurred through my tears. Despite the despair gnawing at my heart, I knew I had to remain strong, not just for myself, but for the men under my command. I was an officer, a leader. The lessons of West Point reverberated in my heart, reminding me that a leader does not falter in the face of adversity, but stands firm, a beacon for those he leads. The following days were a blur of drills and duties, punctuated by periods of silence filled with thoughts of James. I clung to the hope that he was safe, that he was surviving, that he would come back to us. I poured my fears and hopes into letters to Eleanor, who responded with her unwavering faith and soothing words, her belief in James's resilience providing me with much-needed solace. Those were the darkest days, filled with uncertainty and fear. But they were also the days that truly tested our mettle, that revealed the strength of our spirit, the fortitude instilled in us by our alma mater. Then, on a Sunday morning in December 1941, the world changed. The attack on Pearl Harbor, a blow that shook the nation to its core, marked the United States' entry into the Second World War. It was as if a storm, long brewing on the horizon, had finally descended upon us, bringing with it a tempest of chaos and uncertainty. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Orders were received, plans were made, and almost before I had time to process it all, I found myself preparing for deployment overseas. I was to lead a company of men into the heart of the conflict, men who looked up to me for guidance, for assurance, for leadership. I thought back to the day when the commandant of the Corps had spoken to us, his words now ringing truer than ever. In times of war, we strive for peace. It was with this in mind that I stepped onto the transport ship, bound for the front lines of Europe. I wrote one last letter to Eleanor before my departure, expressing my deepest feelings, my fears and hopes, and my unwavering commitment to our future together. Her response, received just before I left, was a beacon of hope amidst the gathering darkness. She wrote of her love, her faith in my return, and her fervent wishes for peace. And so, as the American shoreline receded into the distance, I took a deep breath, my thoughts filled with the task at hand, my heart fueled by the love of my country and the promise of a future with Eleanor. The journey that had begun at West Point was taking me to places I'd never imagined, yet in a way it had prepared me for this moment, for this challenge. The reality of war was a stark contrast to the theoretical lessons from the classrooms of West Point. The front lines were a world of noise and silence, of courage and fear, of life and death. As I led my men through the storm of conflict, I held on to the tenets of duty, honor, country, the principles that had been ingrained in me during my time at the academy. Every decision carried weight, every command held potential consequences. The faces of my men, young and old, mirrored the magnitude of our situation. We were not just soldiers on a battlefield, we were symbols of a nation defending our homeland, our values, our way of life. There were victories, moments when we surged forward, breaking through enemy lines and holding our positions. But there were losses too, moments when the cost of war became a heavy burden on our hearts. Each fallen comrade, each letter I wrote to their families, etched a permanent mark on my soul. Amidst the turmoil, I clung onto the letters from home, especially those from Eleanor. Her words, filled with the mundane details of life and her steadfast belief in our future together, became my lifeline, connecting me to the world beyond the battlefield. They served as a stark reminder of what we were fighting for, not just the concept of a nation, but the lives, the dreams, the hopes of its people. One day, amidst the disarray of the front line, a piece of news arrived. James had been found. He had survived, resisting against all odds in the hostile jungles of the Philippines. The news lit up the gloom of war, a ray of hope piercing through the dark clouds. My friend, my brother, was alive. The relief was overwhelming, a balm to the weary soul. In the crucible of war, the lessons of West Point became my anchor. The bonds I had formed, the values I had learned, and the love I had nurtured all became pillars of strength, guiding me through the storm. As the world limped towards the close of the decade, so too did the war finally stumble to its bitter end. The images of those years, stark and profound, were etched into my soul as soldiers. We had seen the best and worst of humanity. We had seen what man could inflict upon man, but also the resilience of the human spirit, its ability to hope even in the face of unimaginable horror. Returning home was a surreal experience. I stepped onto the American soil, the taste of victory tinged with the sorrow of loss. I had left as a soldier. I returned a veteran, carrying the weight of experiences that had aged me beyond my years. There was joy, too, in the reunion with Eleanor, in the heartfelt embraces and shared tears. In her arms I found my haven, a space to heal, to breathe, to simply be. We got married soon after in the small chapel at West Point, a fitting venue for a love that had blossomed amidst its granite edifices. James was there too, standing beside me, his presence a testament to our enduring bond. Life moved on. We started a family, our home filled with the laughter of children and the shared memories of our journey. I continued to serve in the Army, my experiences on the battlefield deepening my understanding of duty and leadership. The lessons from West Point, those of service, honor, and commitment, continued to guide me through the twists and turns of life. As I look back now, I realize that my journey was not just about becoming a soldier. It was about becoming a man who understood the value of service, the price of freedom, and the importance of integrity. I am forever indebted to West Point for shaping me, for providing the foundation upon which my life was built. In the end, I am just a man, just one of the many who walked the hallowed halls of West Point. But the experiences I had, the friendships I formed, the love I found, and the lessons I learned have defined me. They have made me who I am, a soldier, a husband, a father, a servant of the nation. And for that I will always be proud to say, I am a son of West Point.